Hey guys, my name is Chris and I'm a surgical service registrar, and I wanted to know whether gaming would make me a better surgeon. So I did what anyone would do on their weekend, and I did an informal literature review to see if anyone had proven it. When I first turned on this device 24 years ago, the idea that it would make my generation more prepared for surgical training would have seemed ridiculous. But as video games have become more complex, surgery has become more digital, and now laparoscopic skills are a foundational part of surgical training. Today's generation of surgeons have grown up gaming, and are now being asked to perform increasingly complex camera-based procedures. The question I'm asking today is, does one help the other? Both tasks have instruments that allow you to perform problem solving through a screen. Both can have an inverted axis of movement. Both require you to concentrate for long stretches of time while solving complex problems with frequently changing situational risk profiles. So what does the literature say? Okay guys, so this is the search that we did. First of all, we just did a database search using PubMed, Web of Science and Cochrane database, and we found 25 results in PubMed, 43 results in Web of Science and 14 results in Cochrane. And after that point in time, I was getting a lot of duplicates and I ran out of copy, and I thought, well, that's probably enough to be doing it with. And the refined list found 66 results after I got rid of all the duplicates. So I put all of those into EndNote and then established some inclusion and exclusion criteria to make it as formal as possible. And the inclusion criteria were that the articles had to consider the impact of video game experience on laparoscopic skills and training time, and the exclusion criteria was essentially the inverse of that. And I didn't really want to have a look at articles that weren't in English because I don't speak any other languages other than English particularly well. So with results, the number of relevant papers that I found were 26, which is a surprising number of papers to look at this particular issue. And of those, there were really two key articles that had been written. So in levels of evidence, what I was really looking for were randomized controlled trials that address this directly. And then in the absence of that, or even better than that, would be systematic reviews that had a look at those RCTs and made a quality assessment of whether or not they could be relied upon to give us good information. And there were two systematic reviews that had been done in the last 10 years. The first one was done in 2013 and the second one was done in 2016. And the 2016 systematic review was not only more up to date, but it was more thorough as well. So that was the one that I primarily looked at, and it was called The Effect of Playing Video Games on Laparoscopic Skills Performance, a systematic review by Glassman et al. And they went into some detail with their quality assessment. They essentially looked not only just at the number of papers that were important, but also whether or not they were able to be relied upon based on a decision of their quality in methodology. And of all of the studies that they had a look at, and I've just listed them here in Notion so you can have a look at the breakdown, only 5 of those were RCTs, and only RCTs met their quality criteria, and so they were the ones that they looked at. And their findings were sort of interesting because they found that while some of these RCTs did find a correlation of improvement between those who had performed laparoscopic surgery with prior video game experience and those who hadn't, the structure of those studies wasn't particularly sound, and so it's difficult to draw any conclusions from them. Essentially, they said that in 3 of the 5 studies, with the exception of error reduction, there was no statistically significant difference between those who had prior experience and those who didn't. 2 of the studies showed improvement after the use of specific video games, one of which was Half-Life, out of interest, and even those that did show that improvements had a flawed methodology in the way that they'd constructed their paper. And so their ultimate conclusion was that there's limited evidence to support the use of video games in terms of preparing people for surgical simulation training. And the important thing to note here is that these papers all looked at the performance of people on laparoscopic trainers, not on people performing laparoscopic surgery per se. And so any conclusions that they were able to draw can only really be extrapolated to a laparoscopic skills trainer and not necessarily to the operating room itself. But nonetheless, it's interesting that so many people have had a look at this in a certain degree of detail, and at least in one of the RCTs, they did find that there was a significant reduction in error rates between those who had been pre-trained in Half-Life and those who hadn't. So more work to be done in this area, but nonetheless interesting that people have bothered to spend not only the time to write one systematic review of the evidence in the last 2 years, but in fact 2 systematic reviews of the evidence. And I guess the final note that Glassman makes in their study is that really what we need is a well-controlled study that looks at performance not only in the setting of simulation but also in the setting of the operating theatre itself, if we're going to make any conclusions. And they also question whether there's that much validity in looking into this question at all, when we know that laparoscopic box trainers do have a positive correlation with performance in laparoscopic surgery and do act as an adjunct to surgical training, and they think that maybe that's where people's efforts could better be spent. So it wouldn't be as much fun. Alright team, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, then click on the subscribe button below and like it. If you enjoy these sorts of videos on literature reviews that cover sort of odd topics, then let me know that too, and we can do some more of them. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.